Let's open our Bibles this morning to 1 Corinthians chapter 13. Very, very familiar passage of Scripture. And sometimes, because it is so familiar, we tend to read over it without really stopping to think about what we're reading. Beginning with verse 1, though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, and have not charity, I am become as sounding brass or a tinkling cymbal. Though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and though I have all faith so that I could remove mountains, and have not charity, I am nothing. And though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, and though I give my body to be burned, and have not charity, it profiteth me nothing. Charity suffereth long, and is kind. Charity envieth not. Charity vaunteth not itself, is not puffed up, doth not behave itself unseemly, seeketh not her own, is not easily provoked, thinketh no evil, rejoiceth not in iniquity, but rejoiceth in the truth, beareth all things, believeth all things, hopeth all things, endureth all things. Charity never faileth. But whether there be prophecies, they shall fail. Whether there be tongues, they shall cease. Whether there be knowledge, it shall vanish away. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part, but when that which is perfect is come, then that which is in part shall be done away. By the way, keep in mind the three words, the three secrets of understanding. Number one is context. Number two is context. And number three is context. That portion there that we know in part and we prophesy in part, but when that which is perfect is come, then that which is in part shall be done away, is in the context of love. It's not in the context of heaven. It's not in the context that, when I was a child, I spake as a child, I understood as a child, I thought as a child, but when I became a man, I put away childish things. For now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then shall I know, even as also I am known. And now abideth faith, hope, charity, these three. But the greatest of these is charity. First context, what's he talking about in this entire chapter? The entire chapter is not talking about heaven. It's not talking about what we're going to know when we get to heaven. The entire chapter is talking about charity or love, as the word is usually translated. So in that context, I know in part. I only know a little about love. I don't know a lot about the biblical, practical, love. I only know in part. When I was a child, I spoke as a child. Do not raise your hands, but how many of us, when we were in high school, college, or whenever, it's like, oh, I'm in love. Oh. That's baby love. That's baby talk. When I was a child, I spake as a child. I understood as a child. But when I became a man, that baby love, that puppy love, that kind of love is gone. And now I have a greater love, which will even be manifested more when I get to heaven. This is not perfect, but this is far greater than baby talk. That's not my sermon. I really must hurry on. When many people think of love, they think of some really strong feeling or emotion that overcomes them, and they get this warm, fuzzy, tingling feeling, and it's like, oh, I'm in love. That's what many people think love is. When Jesus said to love your enemies, he wasn't talking about getting this fuzzy feeling. When Jesus said love your enemy, he was not saying that you gotta, oh, I just love my enemy. Oh, no, that's not what he meant when he said that we're to love our enemy. I don't think he was telling us to have some overwhelming feeling of affection toward them. Now, I started working on this sermon originally for my sermon to preach at the conference. But as I got into it, I ended up with about 2 or 3 sermons, and I thought, well, I might as well preach these at church. Now my problem is, how do I take 3 sermons and condense all 3 of them down to 40 minutes? That's going to be my hard part. But I've already got part 2, maybe part 3, and we'll deal with how do you love your enemy when we get to part 2. This is where many people get confused. How can I have this wonderful feeling towards someone that I don't even like and someone that really hates me? The answer really isn't that hard. What the problem is, we have allowed our feelings and mistaken our feelings for obedience. If I have this feeling, I'm in love. If I don't have this feeling, then I'm not in love. We have replaced actions with feelings. And I'll try to show you today that that is absolutely not true. I've said it before, and I'll say it again and again and again and again. The description of love given in 1 Corinthians 13 has absolutely nothing to do with feeling. Chapter 13 is not telling you how to have this fuzzy, tingling feeling that, the I'm in love thing. I've learned people like that, when they start acting all fuzzy and, so, feely and all of that, 2 things. 1, hold on to your wallet. 2, guard your back, because I have seen those people go from I love you to I hate you. Look at what they did Jesus. They wanted to crown him king. They wanted to make him king right then and there. And John said Jesus did not commit himself unto them because he knew what was in man. And that very same crowd, just a few short time later, were the same people that were hollering, "Crucify him." So be careful. People are fickle if you go by feelings only. Every description, everything we read in chapter 13, particularly in verses 4, 5, 6, and 7, are adverbs. How many of you remember your high school English? 3. Well, 2.5. In high school, an adjective describes a person, a place, or a thing. You have on a black, what is that, a sweater? Something? That sweater is very nice. That's an adjective. A adverb describes action. He runs fast. That's an adverb. It's describing how he runs. So an adjective describes an individual, person, place, or thing. An adverb describes action. This description of love are adverbs, and I'll show you that hopefully as we go through. Biblical love is action, not mere words. Now again, do not raise your hand. How many of you ladies would rather have your husband do the dishes, vacuum the floor, or say, honey, I love you, and then beat you up? I think that's a no-brainer, isn't it? We would rather have somebody love us in action than somebody who loves us in words, but then treats us like dirt the rest of the time. This is the kind of action Jesus is telling about. Now, don't misunderstand me. I do enjoy being told, I love you. I enjoy that. You won't offend me if you say, I love you, as long as you mean it in a Christian sort of way. There's nothing wrong with telling each other that we love each other. I like the passage. Paul said, greet one another with a holy kiss. It's like, if I were to walk up to you and kiss you, you would slap me, and then so would he. But it's showing action. It's showing. And by the way, the kiss there would be on the cheek, not anywhere else. If I have to explain that, I've already lost you. Let's go back to my notes. I better stick here. I enjoy hearing, I love you. But sometimes we wait for the feeling without the action, when in reality, the action often brings the feeling. Sometimes we do feel worse. If it's pouring down rain and it's 20 below zero and we got a foot of snow, couldn't think of it, I would be happy. But most people would say, I don't feel very loving today. If you got the flu, it's hard to feel very loving today. In fact, when I was in the hospital for almost 6 weeks, I think I went probably most of that. I was so sick, I didn't care. I don't think I told my wife, especially in the first 4 or 5 weeks, I don't think I said, I love you. I don't remember any, because I was so sick, I really didn't care. Sickness can sometimes bring about. Fatigue can sometimes affect the things we do and the way we act. But remember, love is not feeling. If you don't get anything else, get that point. Love is not just a feeling. It is action, which brings us to our chapter. Imagine Jesus hanging on the cross. He's been beaten. His back is raw. His back is so beaten that his ribs are sticking out. Raw flesh is exposed. His head has been pierced with a crown of thorns. His hands and his feet have been nailed to a cross. And he hangs there in what had to be physical agony But what did he do as he hung there? He said, Father, strike them down for what they did to me. Father, kill every one of them because they whipped my back. Is that what Jesus did? No. What did Jesus say? After those people had beat him, and beat him, after they had spit on him, after they had crowned him, after they had drove Roman spikes through his hands and feet, even on the cross, Jesus said, Father, forgive them. He prayed for their forgiveness. Even after everything they had done to him, his love still was concerned, Father, forgive them. When we use the word charity, we're not talking about somebody who is a professional bum. I don't give them a single penny. But I do give, my wife and I give pretty generously to charity organizations that we know and have checked out. But that's still not what Paul is talking about. The charity here is not a handout. It is not a charity organization that gives food and clothes. The charity in chapter 13 is genuine biblical style love. Verses 1 through 3, we see the superiority of love. Notice in verse 1, though I have, help me if I turn my page back, though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels. Now, if you recall context, the church at Corinth had made a big deal out of speaking in tongues. In fact, speaking in tongues had almost become a sign of whether you're spiritual or not. If you spoke in tongues, you were spiritual. If you couldn't speak in tongues, well, you just weren't very spiritual. So Paul covers that, and he covers this whole thing of tongues in a couple of chapters. But he covers this and shows if I could speak in the tongues, and the word tongues means language. It's all it means. If I could speak in the language of men, there are over 2,000 languages. If I could speak every one of those languages fluently, and if I could somehow speak in that heavenly language of angels, according to the Corinthians, I would be very, very spiritual. Paul said, if you don't have love, you're like an annoying sound. Have you ever had something that just dang, bang, 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 and it just keeps on, keeps on, keeps on, keeps on? You know how annoying that can be? Paul said that's what you sound like. Speaking in other languages, if it isn't based on love. And I don't have time to get into every aspect, or will be, instead of two sermons, it'll be 5 or 6 sermons. But you think you're so superior. In reality, you're nothing but a nuisance if you don't have love. Though I have the gift of prophecy, I can predict the future. Though I understand everything in the Bible, I have memorized and I understand every word, every verse, every chapter in the Bible. I have all knowledge. though I knew everything there was about science, though I knew everything there was about history, though I knew everything about everything, if I don't have love, I'm nothing. If I could remove mountains and I could say, I have so much faith, door, make sure there's nobody out there to open the door. Door open. And the door just opens. Wow, man, he's got faith. If I don't have love, I am nothing. I know everything. I can predict the future. I have supernatural power. But if I don't have love, I am worse than trash. Though I become a great sacrifice, I give all of my goods to feed the poor. I give every penny I've got. Everything. I give it to the poor. And I would be on, I'd be on Fox News. I'd be on CBS, NBC, ABC. I might even make it to, CNN. And wow, he gave away millions of dollars to help the poor. Though I give my body to be burned as a martyr, many, many people died during the Dark Ages, millions of people. But not everybody that gave their body to be burned was a Christian. He said, though I do all of those things, if I don't have biblical love, it doesn't, before God, it doesn't do me any good. Now, in verses 4 through 7, we'll spend the rest of our time, we see love in action. And I repeat again, this kind of love is not a feeling, it is action. Now, obviously, there are so many directions, so many definitions, so many, descriptions that you could take every word and almost build an entire sermon. So if I don't cover everything that you think of, great, you thought of something I didn't. Verse 4, love, charity, is patient, suffereth long. It's long suffering. It's true with other people's faults. I look around, obviously, you're on the front seat, so I start with you. But I go back and I go back and I go a forth and across. And you know what? Not one of you is perfect. Not one of you. Not one of us. Let me include me. Not one of us is perfect. We all have faults. We all have shortcomings. We all have things that just rub somebody the wrong direction. But real love is long-suffering. If you want to find out your faults, get married. I'm not being funny, I'm serious. I can put up with most people on short doses. But when you live with someone 24/7, 365, and you live with them, you see them and know them, and it is normal and, well, maybe not normal, but it's natural that we're going to do things that get on the other person's nerves. But love is long-suffering. Love is patient toward other people's faults. People find out I've been married over 51 years, going on 52 years. First thing most people say is, your poor wife. You know what? They ask me, what's the secret? And if I'm in a funny mood, I've got one answer, but if they're serious, I tell them the secret is first and foremost, Christ must be the center. Christ must be the center. Number two, there must be commitment. When we got married, we made a vow. Divorce was not on the table. I don't care what happens. I don't care what she does. I don't care what I do. Divorce is off the table. Which makes a pretty strong incentive to the third point, where you learn to compromise. Do I get everything I want? If you believe that, please let me know. I don't get everything I want. She doesn't get everything she wants. But love is long-suffering. It's patient. Even in those areas that irk me, those things that get on my nerves, because of love, it does patient things. It actively demonstrates patience. Love is kind. In other words, love does kind things. No, my wife is back there. I better not. Love just, it's not a feeling. Love does kind things. Years ago, to try to be a little bit kind, I started doing a couple of loads of wash for her. She only lets me do 2, and there's no way to ruin them, so I'm safe. Sometimes, I will do the dishes. I will put the dishes up. I will even pick up my clothes and put them in the dirty clothes hamper. Why? Because I love her and I want to be kind. Kind. It does kind things. And it does it without the expectation of being rewarded. If I'm kind to you, maybe you'll buy me that new fishing rod I've been wanting. So I be kind because I want something in return. That's not being kind. That's not doing kind things. It's kindness without any expectation of reciprocity or without any repayment. Love isn't jealous. It envieth not. It isn't jealous when God blesses someone else. I rejoice when, literally, I rejoice when some of you, God is blessed to buy a car that isn't held together by rust. Some of you completely missed that. The car is held together by rust. Forget it. We rejoice. It's not envious. It's like, wow, he got a new car. I'm jealous. No. He got a new car. I rejoice. Love does not do things out of envy. Love does not vaunt itself. It doesn't promote itself. Have you ever met somebody, and I can think of 3 or 4 people right now, they managed to turn every conversation to themselves. Did you know Brother so-and-so had surgery? Why, I had that same surgery 3 times. They removed my lungs 4 times. Did you know he broke his leg? I had a broken leg. He got pneumonia. I've had double pneumonia. Do you like to listen to people who, if the whole world centers around them? I don't. But genuine love doesn't monopolize. It doesn't push itself. It doesn't always promote itself. It isn't always me, me, me. It allows you an opportunity. See, love is, I am actually more concerned about you than I am even of my own self. Love isn't puffed up with pride. I don't love you for what I can get. I love you because of what I can give. Verse 5. It doth not behave itself unseemly. In other words, it never acts in a vulgar, trying to think of a better word for what I've got. It never acts in any way, shape, form, or fashion that would be an embarrassment, that would be morally wrong. People sometimes say, "Will you do something for me?" And even if I know them, sometimes I'll still say, if I don't know them, it's almost 100%. But it's like, first of all, if I can, if it's not illegal, and if it's not immoral, I will do what I can to help you. Love does not behave itself in an unseemly way. It doesn't do anything that would be vulgar or crude or anything of that nature. It does not do something that would be unseemly. It seeketh not her own. It's willing to sacrifice for the good of others. You know, there's not a whole lot of these on, but there's been a few movies on there's quite a few dealing with World War II. One or two dealing with Vietnam, some of those other big wars. And history is full of instances where men would risk their own life to save the life of their men. Growing up, we had church I was a member of, we were right close to the Army base there. So we always had a lot of soldiers come to our church. Several of them God saved, God added them to our church. And one man particularly, well, we had several. One was a Green Beret. So that's where I learned, the Green Beret song. But one of them was a sergeant sent to Vietnam, and I don't know how many men he had under him. We only learned this at his funeral when the generals and all the other people were, at the funeral, and all these generals and colonels and all these people are talking. When he was in Vietnam, his platoon, or whatever it's called, his men were pinned down. It was a Viet Cong bunker, and his men could not move. They were literally pinned down. He crawled out of the foxhole, crawled on his elbows, till he got close enough that he was able to launch a grenade and blow up the bunker. Everybody that was there, the generals, all of them that got the report, they were shooting at him, but they couldn't hit him for some reason. But he was willing to risk his life, literally, for his men. He didn't seek his own. He didn't stop and think what could happen to him and his wife and his daughter. His thought was, how can I help these men under me. Love is not easily provoked. Love prevents us from getting all bent out of shape over something that really doesn't amount to a hill of beans. I am running out of time. Being a pastor, I sometimes, when I'm preparing to preach, I've got my sermon on my mind. That's all I've got on my mind. That's all I want to think about. I don't want to get distracted. And then, if there's something else going on, I've also got that on my mind. And so it's very possible, and it actually happened, to where I came out, not here, so don't you all look around. It wasn't here. And I walked right past a lady. Didn't speak to her, didn't shake her hands, to be honest. I didn't even see her. Who does that preacher think he is? He walked right by me and refused to shake my hand. Sister, if that's all you got to get upset about, you've got a problem. Love is not easily provoked. And it thinketh no evil. It doesn't see some evil plot behind every word and every action. I'm thankful that I think most of you folks love me. I hope all of you do. But I cut up with a lot of you. If you really want to see me outside of my suit and outside of the pulpit, volunteer to spend a week in the print shop, and you'll see me with my hair down. You'll see me at my worst or best, depending. But love doesn't look for some hidden meaning behind every word and every action. It thinketh no evil. It doesn't always assume that you've got an evil thought or an evil action behind everything you say and do. It doesn't think evil. Verse 6, it does not rejoice in iniquity. Paul put it this way in Corinthians chapter 12. He said, whether one member suffer, all the members suffer with it. Or one member be honored, all the members rejoice with it. Solomon put it this way in Proverbs 24, rejoice not when thine enemy falleth, and let not thine heart be glad when he stumbleth. True love does not rejoice in iniquity. I've maintained for years and years, and I told someone the other day, they were asking, they go to one of those 5,000 member churches, and they we're talking about all that their church does, and then it's, how big is your church? Well, let me explain something. Our church is big enough to do anything God calls us to do, but we're small enough that we're like one big family. I told the lady just a day or two ago, I said, if you're a member of our church and you miss, you're going to be missed. You go to your church with 5,000 people, if you miss, chances are nobody's going to miss you. You ought to be small enough that when one member suffers, it affects every one of us. That's love. We love each other enough that if you're suffering, I'm suffering. And I should never rejoice when my enemy falls. Because that's just not what love does. Rather than rejoice in iniquity, love rejoiceth in the truth. People are human. I said that a while ago. But we don't rejoice in people because people are human. We're going to make mistakes. I guarantee you, I will do something at some time that will rub you the wrong way and irritate you. But love doesn't rejoice in those. Love rejoices in the truth. Look beyond my faults. Rejoice in the truth. If I preach God's word, rejoice not in me, but rejoice in the word of God. Rejoice in the truth of God. Love rejoices in the truth, understanding that we're all earthen vessels. We look beyond that and we rejoice. Remember when Paul said, some preach the gospel out of envy, some preach the gospel to try to make it harder on me. Paul said, whether it's done out of jealousy, whether it's done to make me feel worse, I rejoice that the gospel is preached. That should be our our attitude in love. Verse 7, our last verse. Love beareth all things. The word bear means to simply endure or sustain. Love endures. It beareth all things. You criticize me, I'm still to love you. You verbally attack me, I still love you. It beareth all things. But then it also carries the idea, as Paul wrote in Galatians 6:2, bear ye one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. You see somebody struggling. You see somebody going through a hard time. Somebody who is going through a trial. You don't just say, well, I tell you what, I think they should be stronger. It's like, oh, I've heard this so many times. Someone loses a spouse, which has happened millions of times. You lose a spouse, and there's always going to be somebody come around in a week or two and say, you just need to get over it. Instead of complaining, bear their burden with them. Bear their burden. They're going through a very dark valley. Walk up with them. Take them by the hand and agree to walk with them. It believeth all things. Doesn't necessarily mean it believes all gossip. No, absolutely not. But it means to believe those things that pertain to God. Then it hopeth all things. It hopes for the best in every situation. It hopes for the best of every individual. It endureth all things. Love endures the trials and the tribulations. I mentioned our military. Many of those soldiers would be sent overseas. World War II, my dad was shipped over to Austria. My uncle was shipped over to Vietnam. The minimum they expect to be gone was a year. They left their wife. They left their family. They left their kids. They endured separation. They endured hardship. But they did it because of their love for our country and for our people. It endures. It doesn't give up. It endures the slights and the mistreatments. And it endures out of love when everybody else is ready to give up. I ask you, what kind of love do you have? There are fair weather friends. They'll love you as long as things are going good, but when things get soggy, when things turn bad, you won't see them again. Then there's what I call the spongy love. They're always trying to suck something out of you. And then there are those who love you through thick and thin, through good times, through bad times. They're with you. You could call them at 2 o'clock in the morning, and they're right there with you. What kind of love do you have? I'm thankful God's love was unconditional. God did not tell me I have to straighten up before he would love me. God did not tell me that I have to deserve his love before he loved me. God loved me when we were yet sinners. God loved me when I was without hope and without Christ. He loved me when I was his enemy. He loved me when I fought against him. He loved me when I rebelled against him. I'm thankful God's love isn't like so much love in the world. Here today, gone tomorrow. What kind of love do you put in action?